Hi, I'm Dave from boinaband.com, and on this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to make a Dirty South style hip-hop beat in Reason. I'll be going through from the start, explaining my creative process, as well as explaining how I make each synth as I go along. Okay, let's begin. I'll just start by playing you this loop I've made. The kind of dirty southern hip-hop beat. And as generally happens when I don't really have a riff or a lead line in mind, I started by making the beat in this case, so we'll start there. There it is. Okay. Now, I've just made this simply with an instance of redrum inside a combinator. Combinators keep everything tidy. And it's just 3 samples, 1 for the kick drum, and 2 for the kind of snare effect. A snare there, and a clap, combined together to give a more interesting kind of texture. And the claps are on the 5 and 13, which is kind of staple for this kind of genre of hip-hop. And the drums, you can be the kick drum, you can be a bit more creative, and I've just made that a bit bouncy by putting one of the drums on the 4 beat here, which is on the off beat. And doing this, emphasizing one of the off beats, means it's called syncopation, which it just gives a kind of bounciness, which is really cool. And you get it a lot in hip hop and drum and bass and dubstep and things like that. Okay, so let's move on to the next step, the hi-hats. I've just made in a very similar way in redrum, alternating between a closed and an open hi-hat, and I've made them with, where is it? There it is. Just putting in a few different patterns in 32 steps as opposed to just 16, which is the default, and then I've upped the resolution to 30 seconds, so it's twice as fast, which gives that kind of pacey hi-hat effect which you get in a lot of Dirty South beats. Okay, now we move on to the melody. When it kicks in, there. Yeah, that's our saw wave, our really crunk lead line, and I've made that with 3 multi-oscillators in Thor, all an octave apart, all saw waves, and all detuned a little bit with the AMT knob there. And I've run them all through and got rid of the filter, just bypass, so it's not cut off at all. And then I've added a delay and chorus effect just to kind of make it more epic and bigger, and I've widened the sound even further by using the stereo imager to pan what it's made using the chorus effect, which puts it left and right in the stereo field, even further to the left and right. Makes it epic, which is obviously what this is all about. And then next up is this cool little hip-hop flute, which I've made. It looks complex, but it's not too bad. I've made with an instance of Thor and an NXT sampler. So I'll just show you each synth here. The Thor is this kind of effect, and the flute in NXT is that. And then together they work quite well because the synth takes care of the lower end and the flute takes care of the higher end, so when it goes up an octave it has a bit of a different texture, which makes it more interesting. Okay, now I've made the Thor instance with 3 analog oscillators, all different settings. One's a sine wave with a kind of lower octave, then a saw wave with an even lower octave than the sine wave, and finally a sine wave with a higher octave than the original one. And I've balanced it here in the mixer so that the main part of the sound is the lower of the sine waves, so that the other sounds just add a bit more texture. I use the word texture a lot, but it's the best way to describe it, I feel. Just a kind of a timbre to the sound, if you will. Okay, and that's just run through a filter to cut off any of the high end that's too intense. And finally I've run the LFO, which I've set up to be in 30 seconds on the rate, and I've sent that through to the pitches of the various oscillators to add a bit of vibrato to the effect. and I explain a bit better how to use modulation bus routing in my video tutorial Making the Beat for Lady Gaga's Poker Face, so just check that out if you want to see how to use this. It's not as complicated as it looks, so don't worry about that. Okay, and for the sampler itself, I've just used the default Flutola preset effect, so that's not too difficult. I've run them through a Line 6 2 mixer with a bit of reverb on here, and I've used the auxiliary knobs to add the reverb to taste, just to make it sit in the mix a bit better, so it's not just jumping out of nowhere. And then I've run them through a compressor and a maximizer and a stereo imager. Compressor just brings up the level for the whole sound to a consistent one, and then the maximizer stops it from being too loud, limits it there with the limiter and the 4 milliseconds look ahead. And the stereo imager, again, just widening the sound to make it a bit more epic, if a hip-hop flute can be epic. But yes, let's move on. Next is the low end. I've got a big bassy piano note there, which I've made with a default piano setting and the NNXT, and I've heavily compressed some reverb as well to give it a nice bassy tail end, by just running it through there with a lot of reverb and then compressing the crap out of it. Input gain up to full, threshold down pretty low, and ratio up to full as well. Infinity to 1. Okay, next up is the bass, which is just the same as the piano, and that's made with some multi-oscillators, a square wave and a soft sawtooth wave, that's what it's called, and a sine wave there, just a pure sine wave gives a really nice bass sound, and the others add a bit more kind of power to it. And I've run them through a maximizer just to bring the level up to as high as it can be without kind of distorting, and then completely cut off any of the high end, equalize the hell out of it. Yeah, just making sure it's only the bass end that you get, so that'll just sound ace through some really good speakers. Next, I've got the strings, well, one string note. It just adds a bit of tension, and it shows that it's the big part of the track, I find. Just having a big string note held there. And we're nearly at the end there. Finally, I've got this 808 snare, which I've made actually quite well in a different tutorial called my pitched snare roll tutorial, which you can check out, and that explains that. Yeah. Okay, so I'll just quickly explain my process with making the melody. I started off after the beat with the saw wave, and I just wanted to make something kind of dark and cool, so I went with this semitone kind of theme between F and F sharp, which generally gives a kind of cool minor effect to the sound, but to stop it from being completely dirgy, I added some extra notes and stuff as well, some more melodic ones like there, lifts up, ready to drop into the beat. Cool. And then for the lead line, again, I've gone with the kind of semitone theme and cut it up a bit there to make it a bit more interesting on the fourth time round. Cool. And in the true crunk fashion, do 1 octave low, 1 octave high. I don't know why they do that, but it's just pretty cool once in a while. The piano and bass, again, just very simply semitones, just to kind of drive it along. And yeah, the string note, just 1 F note held down on a high octave to power it through. Okay, and there you have it, a big old dirty south beat that T.I. would be jealous of. Get down to that club, get your crunk on, and represent for your clique so your shorty knows you up in that club. If you found this tutorial useful, help me out by rating this video or posting a comment so other people can find it. And don't forget to check out my website, boyinaband.com. Have a nice day!